Hello and welcome everyone to our webinar today entitled How to Create a Results-Driven Accountable Salesforce. My name is Susan Cullen with Quantum Learning Solutions, and I will be the moderator and host for today's session. Just a few administrative things before we get started. All of the phone lines have been muted to create a more enjoyable experience for everyone, but we would like to take any questions you may have, so please feel free to use the text chat window in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen to type in any questions as we go, and we'll be able to either respond to them in chat or at the end of the session today. We've got a very exciting session, one I'm very much looking forward to sharing with you. I'd like to tell you a little bit about our presenters for today. Linda DiCenzo and Jack Cullen are with CRK Interactive. For the past 20 years, they have been helping sales organizations increase sales success through training and development programs for salespeople and for sales management. Previously, Lynn was the National Sales Director at NCR, and he was twice recognized as the NCR Salesman of the Year. And Jack Cullen has sold in the computer industry and became VP of Sales at Zenith Data Systems and then also at Oki Data. Mark Samuel is President of Impact, and for the past 25 years, Mark has been guiding companies to build more accountable organizations. The programs that he has been providing for this period of time have really developed a proven track record for helping organizations achieve long-term sustainable results. He is also able to get those results in very compressed time frames. So we've got a very exciting agenda, and we're eager to get started. And Lynn, I'll turn it over to you at this point to talk about the agenda a little more.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate the introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. We're glad that you could join us today. We expect to be about 1 hour, so we want to stick to our schedule. We want to be respectful of your time. We're going to cover a variety of topics you can see on the screen right now. We'll start with talking about the basics, and if your people are focusing on those basics in a consistent manner, selling value over price, and then really get into the salesperson and the subject of ownership. And really, we like to talk about how salespeople can differentiate themselves, their companies, and really be successful in these very challenging times that we're in. We want to introduce you to a concept called the slight edge, and we'll talk a little bit about a sales methodology that we believe to be very, very useful in these times. It's called customer-focused selling. And we'll get into an area where we can talk specifically on some things that each of you can look to coach your people and really get the maximum that you can and really help them develop and be successful in these times. Mark Samuels will get into the subject of personal accountability and talk about the subjects of execution and recovery, the entire process of change, and of course we'll welcome any questions that you might have and of course your feedback. So just to reiterate, if you do have any questions, please use that text chat box on the side of your screen, and we will be happy to respond to you. So let's talk a little bit right now about some things that you need to be aware of to succeed during these difficult times that we're all facing. And I think the place we like to start is recognize that some of the people on your team, including some of your managers, may never have been through an economic challenge like we are facing right now. There have been a number of recessions that Jack and I have sold through during our careers and how we've helped companies through those careers. But believe me, this is one of the most challenging, I think, that we've ever seen. And the good news in that is that with each and every recession that he and I have seen and that you have probably been through, those of you that are old enough to recognize them, the recovery can be very, very effective. So what we need to focus on are the things that we can actually do, and the things that we can actually do is to prepare for that recovery and make sure we are best positioned to take advantage of it. The other thing we like to talk about is the perception that people have and how that negative perception that they might have could become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so you out there who are in management positions need to create that vision to keep people focused on the right direction and keep them as positive and as motivated as you can in these particular times. And then, we tend to be fundamentalists, and one of the things that you all are aware of during difficult times, you need to go back to the basics, the fundamentals of professional selling and sales management, and help your people execute those basics on an effective and on a consistent basis. So the thing that we would ask you to do is, as we go through this, think about anything that we are talking about this afternoon in terms of your organization, your company, and your life experiences. So we have begun almost all of our seminars with this one question: what's the difference between being product-focused and customer-focused? And the vast majority of organizations that we have worked with over time almost always begin from a product-focused standpoint. They maybe don't mean to, but because of the way certain technology, certain industries, the way certain product sets keep coming out and new product enhancements keep coming, the focus has almost always been on the product, as opposed to where the real value is and where the value lies, which is focusing on what the customer is and what the customer actually is looking for. And so, we define being customer-focused as being able to identify those needs, those goals, those priorities, and even a personal win for the customer. Because when you can, you are in a better position to create compelling reasons to do business with you. And let's talk about that for a moment. We like this particular equation. When the price is exactly equal to the value of something, would most people say that there's a compelling reason to buy, a compelling reason to buy? And most people would say no. Most people are actually looking for either greater value or, unfortunately, how it may play out in the real world, a lower price. And one of the things that is really kind of sad, particularly in a difficult economy, is that people would start cutting price and selling price as opposed to focusing on value. Now listen, the market is going to dictate what the price is going to be for something. And that additional price that you might be able to get is going to come from the perception of value or the reality of value that is part of the deal, part of the solution. So what we try to do, and what we would encourage you and your people to do, is to focus on ways to increase the value. And one of the best things to really do is to not just make assumptions, but to probe deeply and to try to identify what that customer is going to consider to be value added. And because in the end, it really is the customer that will determine what those value added benefits are going to be. And the one interesting thing about this is when you increase the value proposition, you are often able to increase the size of the solution, increase the size of the deal, and actually increase the value not only to the customer, but also to your company in terms of a larger deal. So how do those value added benefits play out? Well, sometimes, in this particular market, and for the audience that's on the phone right now today, you're probably looking for ways to increase sales or increase your profit margins or gain a market share. And one of the nice things that happens when you go through a recessionary period is there are opportunities out there. And the opportunities are for people who prepare and can take advantage of them during these particularly difficult times that we're all going through. So with that, let me ask just one question, and you can answer this yourself quietly. Who do you really work for? You may be part of a corporation, part of a larger organization, but who do you really work for? I'm going to turn it over to Jack Cullen to answer that question for you, Jack. Jack, take it away.
Thank you, Len. That's an interesting question, whether you're an individual sales contributor or whether you're a sales manager and leader of a sales organization. And we would encourage you in either case to have the individual sales contributor view that they, in fact, work for themselves. They may have other stakeholders or stockholders that are part of their family, and certainly other employees in the organization and outside stockholders if it's a public company. But the concept of Me Inc. is something that can create a powerful ownership philosophy for you and or your people. And as the CEO and president and chief shareholder in Me Inc., you bring certain assets to the table. And one of the things that you can help yourself do or help your salespeople do is to utilize each of these 8 assets slightly more than they may currently or you may currently be using them. Beginning with number 1, know-how. Depending upon what it is that your folks are selling, there's certainly going to have to be some knowledge of maybe some technical knowledge, some product knowledge, some competitive awareness, some marketplace awareness, certainly, and a real understanding of the challenges and opportunities that their customers might be facing. One of the other things that they need to know about is people skills, because without these good, sound people skills, some of the other things that they have to have in the way of knowledge base almost become irrelevant. Second asset, energy level. Critically important in any salesperson's career, especially in the extraordinary times that we're going through today. And sometimes that energy level needs to be boosted with outside forces such as the influence of sales management. The fact of the matter is that all of us have the same 24 hours in a day that our competitors have relative to this asset of time. Remind your people, by the way, that in these difficult times that we're going through, who are their competitors? And remind them that it goes beyond the list that they might come up with in terms of people in the same space as you. Competitors today are anyone that they could invest money with, your potential audience could invest money with, as opposed to investing their money in your solutions. So it's a big field of competitors. Here's the suggestion we offer you to give your people. They should spend their time in this market helping people get what they want. Helping people get what they want. That means asking the questions, no shortcuts, getting the true understanding so that they can provide that value proposition that Lynn just spoke of. Number 4, in the asset list, the ability to put blinders on, to concentrate and focus so that they don't get distracted by all of the bad news that is surrounding all of us today. At the end of the day, it's your job as a sales manager to put those blinders on your salespeople and recognize that with those blinders on, they're going to be able to get from the start to the finish each and every day a heck of a lot more effectively. So concentration and focus. Another asset is certainly key for anybody in sales, communication. Remind them that communication involves listening, and remind them that they will be most effective if they're listening 80% of the time to the clients expressing their interest, issues, needs, goals, priorities, and personal win. 80-20 rule. Really, really critical. Coach them up. Number 6, imagination and creativity. This is Len's favorite assets, the ability to think outside the box. Some of you that are sales managers probably can recognize, I know back in my days at Zenith and Oki Data, some of the times when my salespeople got the most imaginative and creative was when they were filling out expense reports. No, just kidding. But internally within the organization, and encourage them to use that imagination and creativity and think outside the box and come to you with suggestions about how they might be able to be more effective and your company be more effective in these trying times. Those salespeople can have really good ideas. Again, what we're trying to do is get them, all of us tend to underutilize these assets. Number 7, decision making. Successful people don't procrastinate. They make decisions. Sometimes they make the wrong ones. The smart ones of us in sales remember the wrong decisions that we make so that we don't make them again, but we don't procrastinate. We have to make decisions. And right across from that is that asset of time, and I'll repeat it. Encourage your salespeople in these difficult times to invest their time helping their clients get what they want. Number 8, attitude. Nobody's ever been born with a bad attitude, and it doesn't come from a lack of education or where you were brought up or anything like that. But it can be impacted, all of our attitudes, by our immediate surroundings. And so you of Me Inc., if you're an individual sales contributor, you're all responsible for your own attitude, but be sure that you're displaying a positive one to help the people that you need to rely on to produce for you. So again, Me Inc., really important concept. We encourage you to use it for yourself as well as for your people. So we look at this question, how do people make a decision to buy? Well, for starters, we firmly believe in any type of a market that emotions come into play when people are making a buying decision. And this is especially true the higher the investment is that you may be trying to offer them to help them to get what they want. We believe that they buy in a very specific order, and this is an awesome responsibility for the individual salesperson, because we believe that the first thing that they buy is, or don't buy, is your representative, whoever's on the front line for you representing your organization. They emotionally believe that this is somebody that they can trust or not trust. They emotionally believe that this is somebody that's going to try to take care of their interest as opposed to being a dollar sign on the next commission statement that they get. And a lot of that is going to be based on how much the salesperson talks in that initial encounter versus actually asking good, probing, thoughtful questions that help identify what are most important in the way of issues, needs, and goals and priorities for that organization. At the end of that first encounter, emotionally, most people are looking for reasons to either do business with somebody or not do business with somebody. And unfortunately, they don't tell us right out of the gate, you don't really stand a chance because I just feel like I'm just another dollar sign on your commission statement. Second thing they buy, if they get past the salesperson, is your company, and then ultimately your products or services or solutions. But here's the message. The salesperson has to accept ownership for the fact that it all starts with them. We encourage you to share this story with your salespeople, because you could have salespeople that are working for the greatest company in the world with the greatest products, services, and solutions. And at the end of the day, if people are not buying them as the individual sales representative for your organization, your story is never going to be heard. They're going to look for reasons not to do business with your company as opposed to looking for reasons to do business. Can't wait to see this gal come back with her proposal, because I sense that she really cares about what we're trying to accomplish here. I was impressed. Hope this solution really works, as opposed to, I don't care if it's the lowest price or best featured solution that ever come down the pike, no way in heck am I going to do business with that individual. So the ownership in these difficult times, really, and salespeople need to go back to the basics and make the difference. It's an important story that you share with your salespeople. So I'm sure that those of you that are sales managers can really relate to this. It's the end of the week, and we're having sales meetings, and we're debriefing why someone, this question says why I failed to make quota, but it could be why I failed to not get the order, why they chose to do business with somebody else as opposed to me and our organization. I'm sure that you've heard these on a regular basis. The reason why we didn't get the deal was I was outsold. The reason why we didn't get the business was I didn't really qualify the opportunity, or I failed to listen and I talked too much. I failed to ask good questions. Or if I did ask good questions, I interrupted them while they were giving the answer to me. I'm sure you've also heard salespeople explain to you that they really focused too much on features and not benefits. They were too product-focused and not customer-focused. I'm sure that you hear oftentimes, I really failed to show them value. That's why we didn't get the business. That's why I'm not making my quota. Or I cut corners in the sales cycle. Unfortunately, these are things that, well, actually, why don't I get your opinion? Let's bring up a polling question. I shouldn't make any assumptions. This list that I just went through, click one of the boxes. How often do you hear these? I hear these reasons all the time. I hear them a lot. I hear them once in a while. I never hear them. And our polling results are coming in fast and furious. And unfortunately, as we can see, there's only one person that says that they hear these. Actually, somebody just changed their vote. So not one individual says, I hear these reasons all the time. Well, there may be a reason for that. Let's take a look at the next slide. We can close that poll. How about this list? Why I failed to get that particular opportunity, or why I didn't get the deal, or why I'm failing to make my quota. It's the economy. Our prices are too high. We're really a bad fit. We lack features in our offerings that they really needed. We get poor leads. The competition bought the business. You, my sales manager or senior management, didn't give me the tools I need really to be successful. Let's get your feelings on how often you hear these types of reasons why we fail to get the business. Yeah, and not surprisingly, I say that since we've been at this for 20 years and out there sitting where you are for a lot of years before we started this business. But yeah, we'll look at the majority of responses coming in on this. And so that's a lack of personal accountability. It's a lack of ownership on the part of the salesperson. And I really believe that it's our really important duty as leaders of sales organizations, those of you that are in management positions, to give them a wake-up call that it's okay to recognize the real reason why you lost the deal and try to address it. And lots of different ways that it can be addressed. But okay, we are on the same page that it's really not necessarily the economy or our prices are too high. It comes down to there was a reason why they were looking to do business with somebody else and not us. Okay, we can close that poll and go on here to our next slide. Len mentioned this earlier, law of the slight edge. We may have some golfers that are out there that easily can answer this question. Last year on the Professional Golf Association Tour, who was the #1 money winner? If you think you know the answer, feel free to type the answer in text chat in the bottom left-hand corner. And then we asked the next question, who was the #12 money winner? And some of you may be wondering, who cares who the #12 money winner was? But we have any guesses here? Melissa Young typed in Tiger Woods. In most years, yes, but last year Tiger was hurt and didn't play in some tournaments, and we have a couple of people giving us the right answer. Vijay Singh was the top money winner on the tour last year, and without endorsements, he made $6.6 million. Jim Furyk was #12, and the difference between the two of them is a little more than $3 million. I hope Jim can get by with his $3.45 million. And again, this is without endorsements. How many strokes do you think separated them in average score each and every time they played around the golf? And again, Vijay being #1 and Furyk being #12. Sean says 1, Lisa says 1, a couple other. Some of you may be thinking out there, well, here's the law of the slight edge, okay? Each and every time they played around the golf, the average difference between #1 and #12, the difference of $3.15 million, 0.29 in terms of stroke average. Now, what that says is that on a consistent basis, Vijay Singh was that much better. A slight difference, a slight edge. Len and I have been tracking this for 25 years, and it's never more than a half a stroke, and it's incredible when you think about it. Now, what does this have to do with sales? When these guys finish around the golf, it's Friday and they're in the middle of a tournament. Do they head to the bar as soon as they finish? No. Where do they go? They don't go to grab a sandwich. They go to the driving range. They go to the practice green. Anybody that's serious about their profession practices their trade. They train to be prepared to succeed. They accept coaching, maybe from somebody that can't play golf nearly as well as they can, or coaching from somebody that in the law professionals practice their trade. Sales professionals practice their trade. They accept coaching from their managers. They invest to be sure that they do all the basics consistently well. As sales managers, that's your responsibility to help them, coach them up. Process is key. We think that whatever sales process you have in place, now's the time to go back to the basics. Frontline sales manager, you're the guidance system to help people to succeed, to keep them headed in the straight and narrow. Key bit of advice. Whatever you expect, look closely at it. Don't make assumptions that even your most experienced salespeople are doing the right things when they're out there interfacing with clients. If you make an assumption like that, it's like being a coach of a sports team and reading about how the game went the morning after. You need to be there. Inspect what you expect. Len mentioned our sales methodology at CRK Interactive. It's called Customer Focused Selling. 5 steps. Planning for success, something that a lot of salespeople don't like to do. Ask them a lot of questions before they get too deep into putting stuff on forecast. Developing strong relationships, moving into the 3rd step, discovery. Where and how can they add value, qualifying, if you will, so that they can present a value proposition not based on low price but based on return for the client. Start a relationship, expand the relationship into a partnership in step 5. And notice the last bullet point on step 5. Gain knowledge of your client's clients and attempt to identify value-based propositions. Then you really become a valued partner. And that's what folks are looking for in these trying times. Some problems that you might want to think about addressing. I know we've got a few folks with us on the line that are VPs of sales or owners of your own organizations. Take a close look at what your managers are doing. Sales managers in these times can't afford to be sitting behind a desk looking at numbers. They need to be out and about with their salespeople trying to produce those numbers, coaching them, their people. It is a big mistake for a sales manager to rely on a salesperson's optimism and assume that they're doing the right things and accept their forecast at face value instead of seeing them in action, coaching them up to be successful, and holding them accountable to perform. And be wary of sales teams that are run like fraternities. And it's not important that the sales manager be liked. It's important that the sales manager be respected and that his or her people are willing to accept their coaching. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Mark Samuel, who's going to talk to all of us about a real critical subject for salespeople, personal accountability. Mark? Let's get to come off mute, Mark.
Thanks, Jack. That was great. I'm sure everyone on the phone has been very well benefited by the advice that you and Len have provided so far in how to increase sales. But ultimately, it gets down to each person and our own accountability. And as you guys suggested, it's all about me, Inc. What are we doing as our own business people, if you will, our own business owners, to drive sales, improve sales, and provide a higher value for our customers? So let's look at what does it mean to even be personally accountable. And our definition of this is taking action consistent with your desired outcomes. And as Jack just mentioned, are you really clear on your expectations, on your intentions, on what it is that you want to be providing your customer and how you want to best serve them? Again, it's about value proposition, as we've heard over and over, and really that becomes your desired outcome. What's the best value that you can provide your customers? And, of course, then the question is, are you taking actions consistent with that? Are you doing the research to know what the customer needs? Are you asking the right questions? Are you listening that 80% of the time? Are you doing your homework to know how to best provide your service or product to the customer? Are you being as creative as possible in coming up with all different alternatives? So that's what we want to really focus on in this part of the presentation, is how do I get better at clarifying my desired outcomes, at taking actions consistent with those desired outcomes without undermining my success along the way. So let's look at the model that all of this is based on. It's called the Personal Accountability Model, and it begins with situation, because we're always dealing with difficult situations. Right now we're dealing with an economy. We're dealing with customers that don't want to spend any money and aren't necessarily realizing the cost of doing that. So now what happens is we're put in a choice point. As managers and salespeople, we are facing, do we go into a victim loop and, moan and groan about it, or do we take our next step of accountability and improve our effectiveness? Well, quite honestly, it's not hard to go into the victim loop. It's very easy to say, let's ignore the problems that exist. Let's not deal with them. Let's deny that that's, really not our job. I wasn't here to be creative. I'm not here to try and solve our customers' problems. I'm just here to sell them a product or sell a service. And of course, as we saw in the survey, it's very easy then to go into the blame game, and start blaming management for the problem, start blaming our product and service for the problem. Very easy to do that, and of course, we're no dummies. We're going to rationalize it and justify it as well as we can. So we're going to find evidence to prove ourselves right, because we always like to be right. But of course, does this really solve the problem? Does this really help us improve sales? No, it doesn't, but it doesn't keep people from moving in the same direction. And of course, if rationalizing doesn't work, then we go into resistance. Well, I don't want to have to work any harder, and we come up with the reasons to not treat ourselves as the me Inc., as to put it on everybody else. And, we don't go to our teammates or our manager for ideas. We just go into a resistance mode. And ultimately what we see people do, and it's very unfortunate, is then they go into hiding, where now we don't show up at work and we don't show up at the meetings and we don't put in that extra time. And, of course, a lot of times we manage our own time. How are we using it? And unfortunately, we use it to hide. And we hide in many different ways. But one of them is just getting together with other salespeople that are in the victim loop, all moaning and groaning about how bad everything is and how we can't do anything about it. But the problem with the victim mode is it's a self-defeating process, because you're not learning, you're not preparing for other challenges, and all of a sudden what you've created for yourself is a cycle of self-doubt and ultimately mistrust, because no one's going to trust you to get results when you always have an excuse for why you don't get results and why you aren't serving your customers more effectively. So the idea here is, let's make a different choice. Let's recognize that that we're in a tough situation, we're in a tough economy, and we're going to have to do things differently. Let's recognize that this is actually an opportunity to improve our effectiveness and improve some of our basics and fundamentals so that we can be more effective and position ourselves for the recovery that Jack and Lynn talked about. Now, how do we do that? We've got to first take ownership for what our strengths and weaknesses are. What are the things that we're doing that's effective? What is it that we're doing that's not effective? And maybe it's, maybe it's the conversation with the customers, but maybe it's that we're not getting enough background information ahead of time, or maybe we're not staying organized or keeping our time commitments when we say that we're going to get back to the customer with our follow-up. And of course, it's not about beating ourselves up for making these mistakes. We've got to get to a position where we have forgiveness for ourselves. Not to let ourselves off the hook, not to condone behavior that doesn't work, but let's understand we're not going to be perfect all the time, and we're going to have our rougher days, and we're going to have our days where, maybe my attitude isn't quite as strong as it was the day before, but the real key in forgiveness is how we recover from that and how we don't get caught in a victimization blame game, but we actually go on to the next step and say, okay, we're human, we're going to make mistakes. Now how do we get ourselves back on track? We had a bad day yesterday. Let's not make it a bad day tomorrow. That's one of the key things for top professionals in sports or in music. They have fast recovery. And what does that mean? Now let's do self-examination. Now let's really look at, what can I do to improve? What are the things that have caused me to slip up in the past? How do I do that differently? And maybe that's about asking our manager. Maybe it's about asking our teammates, even our previous customers. It's not a time to just go sell them on the next product or service. Maybe it's a time to go back and say, you know what, I've been serving you for the last, 5 years. What guidance would you give me so that I could be a better, supplier to you, so that I could be, provide a better service to you and get that feedback. Because once we get the information and once we get it from ourselves and from the people around us, we're now in a position to learn, truly learn what might make the difference between mediocre sales and a high level of sales. And, of course, we can't just learn it as information. It's not just about the awareness, because many of us have gone through courses and workshops before, and we've got that awareness. It's about how do we make sure to take action on it and really dedicate ourselves to doing those things that are differently. That's the way I kind of think of it for myself, is am I doing differently than I did before? Because if I don't do differently, I won't get different results. And that's really what this game is about. What can I do differently in these economic times to take advantage of the situation to strengthen my position for now and for the future? But ultimately, all of us, no matter how well-intentioned we are, we will probably slip into that victim loop. That's going to happen. But what helps us to stay focused and get out of the victim loop as fast as possible is making sure we all have a clear intention. And in a sense, I look at that intention as bigger than just a sales goal. I look at that intention as like, what is your vision for Me, Inc.? Going back to that concept for a moment, what's your vision of excellence? What do you want to be known for? What kind of reputation do you want to have with your customers? In terms of dependability, in terms of being the go-to person, in terms of providing service nonstop and demonstrating true care for your customer, because ultimately that's what builds the strongest relationships and the most long-lasting and sustainable relationships. Even today, I go back to the people that I know have cared most about me when I'm in a difficult time, when I feel like I could need some help, etc. And when it's a person who represents a product or service that's important to me, boy, I want to keep that person around. I don't want to have the next sales. I don't want the company to turn me over to a new salesperson. I want to keep the person who has demonstrated that care, demonstrated the desire to give me value as an individual. And that's, to me, what you want your reputation to be. What is it that you're known for? What are your special talents, your skills, and the difference that you want to make? Now, once you have an intention, you got to say, okay, now what do I do with that? And besides doing this assessment, how do I start to move forward in a way that's going to be effective? And that's where we look at the missing link to high performance. Because quite honestly, most of us here that are on this phone, I'm sure, have gone through many training programs on selling, on sales management, etc. So we've got the skills. We know how to close. We know we've got communication techniques, etc. And my guess is most companies today have a pretty effective sales process. And you've got whatever process that you're using. You've got the systems, CRM that you're using to support that process. And you've got, whatever it is that is your systems for tracking sales quotas, pipeline, etc. But at the end of the day, that's not what creates the sale. At the end of the day, we ourselves have to employ what I call the performance gap in actually getting the sales. And that requires execution and recovery. How we execute our sales process, how we execute our organization skills, how we execute our communications with the customers and building that relationship. It is all about execution. How we follow up when we say we're going to get back to them is an execution issue. And even in regard to how we execute with the other departments that we rely on. Maybe it's a production area, maybe it's an administrative area that we have to coordinate in order to serve the customer. How well are we executing there? Because sometimes what I find salespeople do is we're ready to meet the customer needs, but we have not done our homework within our organization to know what we can actually provide in terms of deliverable time frames and, quantities, etc. So we have to be effective inside of our organization in addition to with our customer. And again, we have to realize we're not always going to be perfect at execution. So at times when the ball slips, How do we recover? How do we get ourselves back on track? If I woke up today not feeling like making phone calls, how do I make sure that, by the afternoon or by the next day, I'm back to making those phone calls and I make up for whatever I missed yesterday, I make up for it today? What's that recovery? And so if we're going to be more effective at execution, here's the process that we can give you to actually improve and make this a reality. We call it the process of change. And it begins with a new mindset. So starting today, based on what you've heard from Jack and Len, based on what you're hearing from me right now, what is the new mindset you want to go into dealing with this economic time, better supporting your customers, building better relationships? What is it that you want to make as a difference in terms of your vision of excellence? Then it's a matter of looking at what's your role and responsibility. So can you expand that to provide better customer service and a better value proposition? Is it about building better relationships, both inside your organization and with your customers and with your network, and maybe, finding ways to support others? Or is it just simply about increasing your expectations, both on yourself, on what you can provide your customers, on the kind of results that you want to do, the number of calls you have to make on a daily basis to stay in connection with people? These are all the things that you want to be clear on. And then based on that mindset, what are the habits of performance execution that you want to begin to change? Because, again, we all have been trained and have skills. But the question really comes down to, what are our habits? What is it that we do automatically every day that either supports our vision or undermines our vision? It's like I can be really skilled at knowing, how to eat the right foods, but if my habit is to always go to the refrigerator as soon as I get home from work every day and go for the chocolate cake, that's not going to serve me. So it's not about just what we know to do. It's about what is it that we do on a consistent and regular basis. What's those habits that we want to employ? And then, of course, setting up our own measurements for that. And not just the quotas that we might be driven by from our sales, manager, but what are the measurements for execution, for changing those habits? Like, how am I tracking, my attitude each day? Am I tracking the number of calls I'm making to my customers? Am I tracking the areas that I want to improve in terms of, finding ways to provide a greater value proposition? How do I track that? How do I make sure that I am diligent about doing those things that I've identified as needing to be done differently so that I know that I'm doing them on a regular and sustained basis? But unfortunately, like any habits that you're changing, while it's really important to measure them, consistently do it over and over and over, and you might even be successful in doing that, there are times we get overwhelmed. There are times we, might be caught with a cold. It might be that we get overwhelmed at work or at home, things that get in the way of us being successful. And that's why it is absolutely critical, and especially in these economic times, for each person to create their own proactive recovery system. So if I'm setting new intentions, okay, I'm going to now, make more calls than I ever did before, or I'm going to reach out to customers in a completely different way, or, I'm going to be much more diligent about my follow-through and follow-up and get myself more organized. While those are great intentions and you're going to set up good practices to do that, know that at any point that you get stressed or overwhelmed, you might slip back into your old habits. And that's not a time to get discouraged on yourself. That is not a time to get down on yourself for, oh, look what a failure I am. I now went back to my old ways. That's just called being human. And that's going to happen. That's where the forgiveness needs to come in. But we don't want to be stupid about it. What we want to do is have a recovery system already in place, like the top athletes do, the top, musicians, actors. They all have recovery plans if they forget their lines. In sports, they have backup plays. They're already set up with recovery for how do I get myself back on track if I slip into old patterns of behavior that don't serve me. And then finally, we do want to make sure to recognize what's working, what isn't working. Make sure that we acknowledge the success that's coming from it. The better, it may not be that sales improve right away, but maybe our relationships are improving, and that's what's going to lead to greater sales. So these are the kinds of things that we want to make sure to stay encouraged about and keep looking at what works and what doesn't work, and making sure we do more about what does work. And keep ourselves in the game. Accountability is never an end. It's a process of improvement that continues all the time. And now we're going to take it one more step, and Lynn's going to lead us in that to look at, okay, how do we coach them up?
Hey, Mark, thank you very, very much. I have to tell you, folks, I've heard Mark do that particular talk a number of times already, and I get more excited about it each and every time I hear it. There are just so many parallels that he talks about that fit directly into what we all know we need to do, and I think he set a nice framework there for us to work with. I'd like to start with one, his mindset bullet point that he had on the last slide. I was speaking to someone just yesterday who has that new type of mindset that we all need right now. This fellow said, I refuse to participate in this recession. It's just a mindset. He just absolutely refuses to participate. He's going to do the things that were successful in the past that allowed him to reach that level of success, and he's going to just reset the gauges and go back to some of the basics and the fundamentals. And those basics are made up of habits. And Mark talked quite a bit about habits. And, we know that good habits are the key to good sales results. So you need to think about habits in terms of how are we executing those fundamentals? Am I doing the things that I need to do? Did I get sloppy? Did I get lazy? Did I think I became entitled at some point along the way? These are all human nature elements that, as human beings, we fall prey to some of these things from time to time. So what we must do is hold ourselves and hold our people accountable. And, are you and are they executing the fundamentals on a consistent basis? Because, ladies and gentlemen, there is no silver bullet. It is back to basics in this type of marketplace that we're in. And we need to keep in mind what are the things that we need to do. So I'd like to spend the last few minutes that we have of your time today talking about some of the keys that we know are out there for coaching success. And I won't have time to go through all of them, but I wanted to spend the majority of the time on number one, which is observe and analyze performance. Can you possibly think of any coach of an athletic team coaching his people based on what he or she read in the newspaper the day after the game? Or could you imagine the director of a Broadway play reading the critique in the newspaper the next day and then coaching from that? You absolutely have to observe and analyze the performance of your people, of yourself, and you have to, as the saying goes, inspect what you expect. And so it starts with that observing and analyzing, and the rest of it follows through, suggesting areas of improvement, showing desired method, having them try, actual role-playing, actual making of a call, actually, going through a presentation to practice. And, of course, the coaching never stops. It is an ongoing process that happens each and every time you come in contact with your people. So let's talk about number one, and let's take a look and let's observe and analyze. We'll give you some things to think about for many of the steps in the sales process that your people are going through. We begin with prospecting, and we like to start with the pipeline. And, are there adequate number of qualified prospects in the pipeline? And do those prospects also include the existing customer base? The one lesson I learned many, many years ago when I first joined the NCR Corporation in sales was that in difficult times, and we were in a recession then, you use your existing customer base. And as Mark pointed out, you go back to them. You find out what has been working that you've been doing for them. You ask them to identify additional areas where you could be of service. You ask them to help you out. I mean, these are the customers. They are your life source. You want to get as close and up close and personal as you possibly can with a core group of people. And when you can, you will be in a situation where when times recover, when they are in a better position, they will take advantage of the relationship that you've gone out of your way to keep with them. So keep that in mind. Use your existing users. Do your people know who the best person to call is at the account? Are they calling at the right level? Are they gathering enough information before they make the call? Or are they showing up and asking the same old questions that everybody else has been asking? They need to show they've done some research in advance. Are they able to create interest? Are they able to capture someone's interest so that they can get the appointment? Do they have are they saying the right words, actually down to the right words? Are they putting the right words in the letter or communication or email that they might be sending out? Are they organized? Do they have that customer file, prospect file, the database? Are they using the tools that are available to them? And one of those tools, believe me, in this day and age, are testimonials and references. You need centers of influence. You need to be able to go back to people that you have helped accomplish specific benefits and specific goals and be able to reference them at other accounts. You need to leverage the work that has been done. And then we talk about observing and analyzing on sales calls. And we break it out, initial calls and maybe repeat calls. Do they have a pre-call plan? Do they have an objective for the meeting? Was it just a meet and greet, or do they actually have an objective? Do they have a good initial benefit statement, something to kick the meeting off with? Do they read and adapt to the other person's behavioral style? We use a model called DISC. It's not a new model. It's been out a long time, but it's very effective in helping salespeople to know that each and every call is going to be slightly different. Some calls they're going to go into a lot more detail. Others, it's just a high-level bullet point, give me the bottom line. And they need to know when to turn it on and when to back it off. You can never assume that they are establishing credibility and trust. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make, is that they think that they have established credibility. They think that they are positioning themselves to be someone who could be a trusted advisor, and are they actually doing the things that are going to allow someone to want to trust them, to want to feel that they're credible? And you have to look at some of the details. It can take a long time to establish that credibility and trust, and it can be broken in just a moment by saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. Do they have enough information about the actual prospect's needs and problems and dreams, what their vision is, where they see their company going? We talked about who should be doing most of the talking on an initial call. The one lesson we try to preach is the more you get your customers and prospects to talk, the smarter they think you are, because you're listening, and you need to be listening actively and let them know that you're listening. And can your salespeople, how well do they handle indifference or rejection or objections that come up? You need to watch each and every step along the way in here. And then my favorite one is on the bottom here. At the end of every meeting, are your people actually getting a commitment to action from the other side to do something? Whether it's contact somebody else, whether it's show you some of their information, whether it's to spend some additional time, turn you on to other people that you should be speaking with. Is there some commitment to action, or is the salesperson doing all of the work, doing all of the heavy lifting? Believe me, if they won't spend time, if they won't invest time of themselves or their people or their resources with you, they're never going to spend the money. So it always begins with gaining some small commitment to action. And then during the actual interview, maybe a next call or follow-up, how well do they use questions and probes? You want to talk about executing effectively? Do they go into a meeting prepared with a list of questions that they know they want to ask, or do they wing it? And, the more important the call, the more time and preparation really needs to be done. These are the fundamentals. Can you imagine a professional football team going in without plays, or going in with 2 or 3 basic plays that they run all the time without preparing in advance for that contest? It's absolutely absurd. You know that they need to not only have the plan, but then they need to execute that plan. So are they able to uncover, the priorities, the needs, the wants, the goals? Are they able to, conduct an interview, or are they just in there pitching a product? And we really believe that, interviewing is the secret. We got a system we call FIND. You want to identify the facts, the issues, the needs, and the dream of the person or win of people. You want to find those important things out in a meeting, because that allows you to put a solution together that's going to address some of those needs. And are they able to, gain, again, commitment or agreement on some of these key issues and key areas that need to be addressed, so that, they are buying into the entire process? And then other interactions or follow-up meetings or presentations. What's the level of professionalism? Are they value-based or are they product-based? Are they able to review what the needs and the goals and the priorities are? Are they able to articulate that and then gain buy-in from the customer that those, in fact, are the areas that they need to have addressed? Can they translate features and advantages over into benefits? Or are they just a talking brochure? Can they provide the testimonials and references to support claims that are made? Do they have that proof available, or do they just expect people to believe them because they've said it so? And, are they able to answer any questions that come up or any objections or resistance that come up along the way? You obviously don't want to let your people drown, but you want to see how well they're able to handle those kinds of situations. And, one of the things that, in fact, we were just speaking with one of our good clients now, there are many times non-sales people that are in very positive selling situations that they don't even recognize. Are they able to identify additional opportunities and communicate that information back to the appropriate people within your organization? And then the last one, when trouble does arise, how do they manage that? Do they manage it well, grace under pressure? Do they handle their objections effectively? Do they become argumentative? Do they make up answers or excuses? What is the level of professionalism? All of these points are things that I really do believe you need to look at with your people. And, as we were pointing out and as we talked throughout this presentation that we're making to you today, this whole area of accountability, it relates to everyone and every aspect of a customer interaction. And it's absolutely critical. If I could just translate to you some of the things that you need to think of as you tie this all together. Are they recognizing their pluses and their minuses, the things they do well, the things they don't do so well? Are they taking ownership of recognizing that, I'm not perfect. I have some areas that I want to capitalize on, and I have some areas that I want to work on to become better at. And, they need to not only forgive themselves for mistakes, but you need to forgive them for mistakes. I don't mean, making the same mistake over and over again, but again, they're human. And they need to take and use that self-examination that Mark talked about so that they can recognize the areas that they need to get better at, and then make the commitment to learn. Learn what they need to do. Learn from others. Learn from you, the manager. Learn from their peers and their others that they work with, and take advantage of the opportunity to become as good as they possibly can, so that when they take action, when it's time to come back and take the appropriate action, they can execute as well as they possibly can. And, I think all of this adds directly to the area that Jack kicked us off with this morning, which was Me Inc., because they need to take personal responsibility, personal accountability for themselves. So all of those items, I think, are absolutely critical. And, when you think about it in terms of, what are we trying to do? Listen, we have some very, very specific things we'd like to leave you with today. Remember this one. What gets measured is much more likely to get done. So make sure you're measuring the right activities, and make sure they know you're measuring the right activities. Don't just let them submit reports, call reports, prospect lists, any type of a paperwork that you ask your people to do, which most of the time they hate, but make sure they know you're looking at it and that you are using it as a tool. Measure the numbers, measure the activities, measure their abilities, and then coach them up. We're big, big believers in coaching them up, training, development, get help when you need it, but you are the bottom line. You're there all of the time. You are the first person that they are going to contact when they need help. So you need to be able to coach and train and develop them as many ways as you possibly can, and make sure you hold them accountable. I mean, I think that really is the key. Well, we've come to the end of the hour. Susan, I'd like to turn it back over to you for wrap-up and any questions that anyone might have.
Great. Thank you so much, Lynn. And thank you also to Jack and Mark, the three of you, for an excellent presentation today. I think you really provide some excellent food for thought on how organizations can develop a results-driven, accountable sales force. And we'd like to say thank you to all of you who've participated with us today. We would like to make a special offer to you. In just a moment, I'm going to move to another slide where you will be asked to click a feedback form and provide us your feedback on today's session. And when you do, as a result of that, we'd like to provide you with an online self-paced course called Coaching for Sales Managers. Now, this course was created by Jack and Lynn at CRK Interactive, and I think you'll find it a really valuable session that you can take away also in addition to today's session. So if you could click on the link that you see on the slide right now where it says feedback form, this will take you just a moment. You can indicate there your thoughts to us. You can also ask any questions that you would like to ask that maybe we didn't have a chance to get to today. Feel free to do that. Don't forget to click the submit button so that we can respond to you. But we would appreciate it if everybody could do that now and could give us your feedback. It's very meaningful to us. I know, as was mentioned in the presentation today, our goal is to make sure that we are meeting your goals, and we want to do everything that we can to be a valuable resource to you. So if you could do that now, we'd greatly appreciate it. And while you're doing that, while people are completing that, if anyone has a question and you'd like to press *6, that will enable you to come off mute, and we can hear you, and you can ask your question. So feel free, if you have any questions now, to press *6. Please make sure also that you're completing the feedback form. So what questions might anyone have at this point about anything that Jack, Lynn, or Mark talked about today? Thoughts, comments, questions? We'd appreciate it.
Susan, this is actually Jack, and I just want to echo something that you said a moment ago. On this feedback form, please remember to click the submit button, otherwise we won't receive it. We'd appreciate it. Don't be bashful. *6 will take you off mute, and we'd love to answer any questions, or if anybody has any comments, we'd love to do our best to address your questions. *6 will take you off mute.
Well, it doesn't sound as if we have any additional thoughts, comments, or questions at this point. Please, again, thank you so much for completing your feedback form. Oh, hi.
Yeah.
A thought or comment there?
Yeah, will the slides be available to us?
Yes, I will be sending everyone a recorded version of this webinar, so if you have registered, you'll get a copy.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's fine.
What other thoughts, comments, questions might anyone have? Okay, well, at this point, we'd just like to say thank you again, and thank you for sending us your feedback. I'd like to also make a personal thank you to Linda Vincenzo, Jack Cullen, and Mark Samuel. Great job today. Some really good feedback for everyone on a topic that I think is so timely and so important for organizations facing in this economy. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
And Susan,
Bye
thank
now.
you for putting this together. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.